In today's video I have this Sanyo television. This is a CTP7608. It's one I picked up from the old lady's home that I got a few other ones, a few portables from, and came along with a couple of beta. It was in her lounge room sitting on its legs, which I've currently taken off. You normally just pick these sets up, sit them on one end, and you can unscrew them. They go in diagonally on the corners. And she had a big 8300, I think it is, Sanyo VCR beta machine sitting on top of it. Didn't look like it had been used in quite a long time. And yeah, the owner wasn't going to turn it on and tell me what it did, so I did turn it on and it did power up. But I think the tube's getting pretty low in it. And yeah, most of these were twin rotary sets, this sort of era. This is a 75p chassis. Basically I think they named them after the years they came out, so the 73p, which I've actually just picked up one recently, was the Delta gun that Sanyo must have sold just before colour TV came out and went into the first year or two of it. Then they went to this 76p chassis. This was followed by 78p, 79p, 80p, 83p and 84, 85. Not sure if they went any higher than about 85. They went to like P11s and God knows what chassis after that. But they came out every few years, so this is a 1970s, not exactly sure what year this came out, would be slightly later, probably 76 to through to 78, something like that. They would have sold these. And yeah, a few of them had touch tuning on them like this one, and this is an extra rare one because it has the remote control. Ultrasonic, as most of them were back then, so prior to infrared, and we've got on, off and channel by the look of it. So I haven't looked inside one of these for ages. I was almost thinking at first it might have been a later model TV or later chassis in it, even though it had a 75p looking cabinet on it, but it turns out I looked up the model number in a chassis list and it's definitely a 75p according to that. We'll take the back off and have a look in a minute, but this is plugged in. One button colour. I think they said, I looked up the manual, couldn't find a manual for this exact model, but thankfully with Sanyo they had like a 56 or 560, probably a 7 to match this. Possibly that's a smaller TV, so they might not have made them that small. Then they had a 6607 or 8, which is similar, and then yeah, into the 76, which I think is should be a 56 centimeter or 22 inch. And then they had the 86 series, was a bigger one, 63 centimeter, 26 inch. And so the circuits are usually pretty much identical. So I found an 8608, I think. And I think the 8607 or 7607 something is the same set, but it doesn't have the remote feature. It's basically got the touch tuning, all identical. If it's the same screen size, it'll be identical, but just not some of the circuitry for the remote. If it's a bigger screen or smaller screen, you'll have a slightly different power supply, different EHT and stuff, but basically the same circuit. I think all the small signal boards and these from the 34 upwards are all pretty much the same. And then they just get bigger tripplers, bigger line output transformers because they're separate in these still, and the power supply probably similar things. Change the ratings of how big the power supply is and stuff. I think the boards might have been slightly different in them, but it's been a long time since I've looked at one of these. But they're really good televisions, super reliable. Not surprised this one still goes, but of course with the amount of years use it's had, the tube is a bit soft in it. I can't remember how bad it was. I did actually find a very similar, I found an 26 inch version, an 8.6 series, years ago, early 90s it was, on the tip, when I was dumping some rubbish, and I thought, oh, that looks nice. It was in really good condition like this one. And so with a bit of work I managed, I think there was a double ender, it had speakers at the other end. It was a massive cabinet, heavy thing for its day. I did manage to get it in the trailer, bring it home. Diagnosed that the line output transformer was faulty, and I think these things shut down and squeal or make a slight squealing noise when because they are switch mode power supply, I think, so when they're overloaded they make some sort of noise from memory. Diagnosed the line output, ordered a new one, was about $40, which was a bit of money back then. Fitted it, and that one, the tube was completely shot in. You could barely see an image on it, so that's why someone took it to the dump. They obviously ran it till it finally stopped working and dumped it. And I ended up selling the transformer to another guy. Luckily he was fixing a similar model, so it didn't work out too bad in the end. And then I just gutted that for the chassis and chucked it back on the tip where it came from. So that bit of a waste of time, but I got a good chassis out of it. So pretty rare you use any parts out of these. So I think occasionally they'd blow things like horizontal outputs or transistors in the power supply. I can't really remember what used to go wrong with them. Used to see a lot of them around as second-hand TVs I'd buy. The twin rotary versions, which came out in the sort of later, mid to late 70s, I guess, often had a stuffed tuner in them because the grease would dry up in them, because no one ever used UHF until SBS came out, which I think was getting towards the mid 80s, maybe 83 to 85 or somewhere around there, at least by the time we got it. So all the tuners were seized up in them, and I don't think you could really free them most of the time. I know I did try to disassemble it. I might have had a later model one I could put in it, but a lot of the early TVs with twin rotaries, HMVs and stuff were the same. The tuner never got turned from new, and so the grease set in it, and the shaft would basically stick to whatever it rotated in, some sort of collar or whatever on the non-moving part of the tuner, I guess. And that was a common issue with those. But anyway, we'll try this thing out. Make sure the volume's down. Scratchy pot. Very scratchy pot. Not surprising, I forgot it had that. Got a channel light up, and yeah, I don't know how long these took to warm up. Not that long, I don't think. But it is an inline tube. I can see a few flickers. We might be on a channel that's basically muting the picture. We've got a bit of... There's no signal on this anyway. Looks a bit out on the... Let's turn the brightness up. Colour. Have we got anything we can... Oh, there we go. Bit of snow, so it looks a bit on the dark side. To be fair, it's actually sharper than I remember it looking. I think it looks a bit, yeah, you can see convergence issues around the edges. Definitely got some, I can see some red on the snow. I think the edges of usually the corners go first. You'll see the focus isn't quite right in there. But we better hook something up to this. One button colour. Oh, maybe that's all it was. I've never seen it. I wonder if it's like the LG thing or something where it uses a light dependent resistor or something to block it. Oh, what did I do? I changed channel. Does it? I'm just trying to see if covering something up makes it brighten up or anything, but it doesn't seem to. So maybe it's not an LDR. Something making a funny noise. I think that shadow mask is making a weird rattling noise. We're gonna have to clean that. Contrast. That's actually not as bad as I thought. We've got a tone control, vertical hold, horizontal hold. Ugh, every time I touch that, something. Let's see. No, remote. I cleaned the battery contacts in this. Doesn't turn it on and off. Doesn't change channel, so we're going to have to look at that. It did have a bit of corrosion on the front, so hopefully it hasn't damaged the ultrasonic unit or anything. It wasn't too bad inside, but they definitely had leaky batteries in it at some stage. One thing I just discovered is if you leave the power switch on and unplug it and plug it in again, it does go into some sort of standby. So the knob was out, but it didn't come back on. And where's the tuning on this thing? It should be a drawer. That's right, it's kind of like the old Philips and stuff. We want low band. These have got the dual sockets on the back too. 75 ohm for VHF and 300 ohm for UHF. They were expecting people to use two different. Just check that's here. Sometimes you've got to go, there's like a second tuning position. Colours must be flat out looking at that. Are we on? Yeah, it's turned off. Where is the colour? Oh, it's up here. That's actually better than I thought. Grayscale's pretty good. Geez, you can really wash it out. Probably want more around there somewhere. Brightness, plenty. A lot of interference there at the moment. Having the pattern generator right next to it probably doesn't help. Purity's fine. And yeah, that's what I was probably seeing, a bit of convergence out there. Bit of red out. Not the end of the world, and it does look a tad sort of blurred there, bit of blue. Let's find the dot pattern. Yeah, you can see again convergence out quite bad in that corner. No purity issues though, so I don't think it needs degaussing or anything. Yeah, it's mainly this top corner of the screen. Definitely converges there, which may be making it look blurry. even if it isn't, I reckon that focus is slightly out maybe. These dots are a bit oval shaped, which can be a sign, but that may be as good as it gets. And I'm actually seeing a bit of patterning on the... I think we've got an issue with the... possibly with the shadow mask in this. It was making some funny noises before. It's got a bit of that shimmery stuff which it used to see in computer monitors quite a lot, but not in colour TV so much, so possibly something's a bit out there somewhere. Sounds solid enough, unless it's just some interference or something. Maybe it's just on that pattern. Oh, we've lost colour. So maybe the tuning's drifted out a bit. I don't know if I... where's the AFT on this thing? Oh, have we lost colour? Oh, there it is. I think the AFT switches on when you shut the door, but I don't know for sure on this set. Oh, it doesn't have a switch. Should have an automatic fine tuning somewhere. That switch is actually a bit dicky, I think, because just bumping it is making it go dark. So what's that do now? Just dims the hell out of it and makes it look absolutely horrible. Yes, very dicky contacts. Oh, now I've broken it. Can't get it back to normal. Yeah, the colour's a bit over the top on this one. Can't see an automatic fine tuning switch anywhere, so maybe it is meant to kick in when you put the drawer in, but it did lose colour then, so sometimes changing channels or something will cause issues. Cool colour, see if it comes back on, which it does at the moment. Oh, looks like I might have to do something about the lighting out here. I'm sure it comes back alright when the TV's off, which it does. So I might have a quick look inside this thing, and I guess I'll have to have a look at that remote sometime, see if we can get that to run again. So that's what it looks like on the back side. I think these were meant to slide off, but from memory I just used to take the screws right out because they never work very well from memory. And they've got some metal brackets to hold them in place, so you don't have to worry about them dropping, which can be an issue in some TVs, which you have to watch when they can drop and take the back off the tube. So that's it. 75p chassis, 2 red screws here to undo it. I wish it's got 3 red screws, maybe you do have to take them out. Where's the tube marking? I can't even see it, it's hidden under there I think. I think that's usually best to unplug the board. I can't believe how clean this thing is inside. Got a few cobwebs, but my god, usually it'd be coated in dust. Yeah, these slide out for a bit of easier access. Something's holding on. Oh, that's come off now. A little twist tie there with a yoke. And yeah, we've got a separate line output transformer, tripler. That's the focus unit. Actually, that might be an earth resistor, that one. They used them in a few of these. I'm not sure if it was to discharge the EHT or something, because that's the focus there. That's our input from the line output. And then the focus here goes up to the tube there, and that'll have an earth connection as well somewhere, I think. A little black wire there. I think they used to crack occasionally and start hissing and carrying on. Line output transformers would go in these, pretty rare, but it did happen. That's your horizontal output on this big black heatsink. That's your power supply there. Another heatsink for another TO3 chopper transistor. Don't think I ever had the filter caps go in this model. The later models used to go, the 80Ps, but not these, I don't think. And we should be able to, I think, do we just undo some screws, and I think these plastic clips. Yeah, that's it. There's the other one there. Unhook it, and your boards basically swing out for access when they let you. I think sometimes you have to undo the screws on the top. So here's like our low signal board. You can see your RGB adjustments, luminance filter, that's probably the service switch, which will collapse your vertical down. There's the low light or something adjustments for the RGB. We've got the back of a big transistor there. Maybe that's the chopper transistor. I thought it was this one on the heatsink. What does that one do? I forgot there was another one tucked in there, and it's the same with the power unit. You can, from memory, we undo those two, which is this cover. You have to take the cover off. I think it does pay, and then this screw here, I think. If we slide the whole, you could pull the whole chassis partly apart here and to get access. And again, this board, there's another one there. You've got to unclip it. Obviously being a bit more careful with this one, since it could have potentially charged up capacitors on it. I don't think it would at the moment, but best to treat them as if they are. Where's the screw? There's a screw on the top here. I think I can get that to rotate. I think, no, maybe not. It's going to, yeah, this cover, that's it, it comes off. Yeah, I think I have to loosen that screw. Yes, if I just loosen that off a bit. Well, easier said than done, isn't it? Oh God. Yeah, that's it. Careful I'm not pushing down on that chopper transformer or anything. That help? I think it is. I'm pretty sure that's the frame of the board. It's got a bit of wiring and stuff. Probably needs an unclipping here. But you get the idea. But you could get to the back of the board here and do any work you needed. And same with the horizontal section. I think, yeah, if you can swing this. Well, don't even undo that screw, that's right. So you can swing the heatsink out, swing the board back this way, get access. We've got a pincushion control there by the look of it. I think one of these is horizontal width, vertical lin, vertical size, the usual kind of stuff. Feel these caps look a bit cooked, especially that one there, which is right next to a resistor. Probably doesn't help, but I don't know. I think the old caps used to go in these. I think the one that does the video B plus used to fail in these, and you'd get retrace or dark picture or whatever it was. It's not on the neck board. I think that's the screen control there. Doesn't say, but I think that's the screen adjustment, the sort of brightness level. And you can lift this chassis up. It's on little slidey rail things, but you can go to where there's a hole in it, lift it up, and they can be completely removed. Normally you wouldn't remove them unless you're scrapping the set. Oh, we're going to look at the tube. It is a, still can't read it, 560 AFB 22 TCO1 or something. Not sure if Sanyo made their own tubes. I suspect they may have done. But generally they're very good tubes, though, yeah, with a lot of hours. Of course they wore out like anything else, and in this sort of era Japanese TVs, it was normally the 63s with 26-inch tubes that would wear out in them, whereas the smaller ones, smaller they got, the longer they lasted usually. I don't think I ever saw one worn out in a portable. And even their later sets, I used to scrap a lot of 80p chassis portables, which were just a little white portable, VHF only tuner, RF input, completely useless for the sort of mid-90s kind of era, or very low value, and certainly later into the 90s. But the tubes were always good in them. I used to just give a guy who went around garage sales and stuff $5 each for them, and had a pile of them in the shed there, and just every time I had a busted tube or faulty tube to fix, either in one of my second-hand sets I bought or a customer set, I just quote them for putting basically the labour and a little bit for the tube. And I don't think I ever had someone refuse fixing their TV that way. And like I say, often in Chinese sets and stuff, the old Sanyo 1980s tube was far better than the one that they put in at the factory a few years ago that had failed. So they were really good use for that. Same with those Amstrad CPC7608 or whatever computer monitors. They were very handy for the same thing, and the same thing, they were just rubbish at that point. No one wanted them back then. You'd probably get a fortune for them now, but they were just junk, so we used to use the tubes out of them. And these, especially these earlier sets, a lot of the tubes in them just lasted and lasted, and you could fix later model TVs with them. This is kind of a fairly thick neck version, so they end up going thinner after that. And of course this wouldn't fit any of the later sets from sort of the mid 80s or probably I'm not sure if the 83p version of these, I think they still had this thickness of tube neck in them. I think after that they went the thin necks, certainly by sort of 84, 5, 6, somewhere around there. These tubes were basically not used in any modern TVs. So computer monitors always use thick necks, interestingly. Even though most TVs went away with it, they tend to keep them in the larger screen sizes. Sharp, I think, was the only one. Actually, was it Fujitsu General? I did see a couple of sets, 63cm with thin neck tubes, but the Sharp ones used to get issues with them arcing and carrying on. So I don't think it was a good idea to make them in the large screen size, maybe because of the higher voltages or something. I won't put that just on just yet. But that's basically all there is to it. And this is just, yeah, simple inline tube, so you've just got the usual magnet assembly to do convergence and stuff. Much simpler than the chassis before this. Just got to watch you haven't bumped any pins or anything, and don't force these on. If they don't want to go easily, there's an issue. There's a little locator hole there and a little pin. Usually the focus pin's also separated out. Being a high voltage one, you can see the focus wire going in there, so that goes to that sort of separated pin. It's got a pin gap either side of it. I was going to say this one's got a splitter in here to separate out UHF and VHF for the tuners. But this is actually a bit later than the other ones. I think it's just got 75 ohm or 300 ohm switchable. They're not UHF and VHF, so that's a good thing. Don't need a band separator. If you just, sometimes you could just combine the 75 ohm and the 300 ohm. Some had two 300 ohms. I think the rare ones had two 75 ohms. But you could buy a band splitter or band separator that would plug in the back here and just hang off and have one single 75 ohm socket on it to plug your antenna in. So it's just a bit of a quirk of some of the 70s TVs. But a nice looking relay there would be the power on off part. Separate transformer there would be for your standby. Some of these, I think it was the earlier model, used to actually have a heater transformer separate. We've got an audio out transformer in there, so that's rather primitive and expensive way of doing things. But these early sets, that's why they got a bit of weight in them, is not as efficient as the later ones. Of course, you've got this whole metal chassis holding all the components together, whereas I think the next two models, 78, 79, are similar to this, but they have more on the main board, but they've got heat sinks either end, I think. And then the 80p, you pretty much go to maybe a fine metal frame around a circuit board or just a circuit board only, and that was it. And everything on the one board. Have we got a date in this thing? Someone scribbled, I think, 78 in the top of it. This could be a 1978 or thereabouts by the time they design the chassis, I guess, and get them out on the market. I think these cabinets were made in Australia. They might be fully imported, but a lot of... I don't know if Sanyo, I think they may have had a plant in Australia, but I'm not 100% sure. Sanyo, Guthrie, Australia, manufactured in Australia by... So yeah, so the cabinet would probably be made here, and the chassis and tube basically imported and inserted in there. I don't think they made any of the electronics here. Probably not even the wiring harnesses or anything. But some of these, I think the Sharp ones had like Key Industries Australia or something stamped on them. This maybe Sanyo made these in-house. Some of them outsourced. I think NEC may have also used Key Industries at some point. And then they become fully imported when it comes to the plastic case televisions. And yeah, to adjust these ones, you really need them on a bench. I've got it on shelves at the moment because it's the only room I got. That's the first time I've seen it in months. But to adjust these, you'd normally have them just on a flat bench, none of this stuff above like I've got shelving here at the moment. And you put a mirror on the other side, and that way you can just tweak them from this side. There's no point trying to reach over. Some of the earlier sets had like a little convergence board or something that would flip up here, and you could work on the front side of the set looking at the screen and adjust it from the front side. But these ones here definitely from the back. We might give the focus a slight tweak, see if we can get it any better. It may not do any better, it might get slightly better. I think the colour balance is pretty right. The pincushion was a bit out on one side, we can try that, but it probably, if one side's good and one side's bad, that's not what you want. It'll usually do both sides together. So sometimes it could be some of these caps are getting a bit out or something, so it might even be worth undoing that board and checking a few. And yeah, mainly clean the volume and the colour, whatever colour preset switch, whatever it was. Okay, I'm back on this TV. I've got the front here, front control part out. You probably could clean the contacts with it in place, but I like to get them out so you can actually see it. So there's 3 screws and a little clip holding that. Obviously got to remove the 2 knobs off the slide pot and the volume power switch before you can get that out. And we should be able to get access. There's the main pot. You can get entry in where the terminals are. So give that a good squirt of contact cleaner. And hopefully that'll fix our volume switch pot. Sometimes these things get so bad from so much use you do have to replace them. I don't know if Wagner Electronics used to sell them. They're all fairly standard though. In some TVs they have longer shafts or something. But I have replaced a few over the years. Usually just because the volume part's impossible to clean and worn out. And then we've got this, whatever it was, one touch colour or whatever switch. Turns out I looked at this manual for a similar model to this, and that switch seems to do the AFT as well, which is strange. The automatic fine tuning, which normally you tune your channels in and then that sort of locks it in place, stops it drifting off, anything like that. So I don't know quite why they've got that in there. Without an instruction book I can't find out exactly what that mode's meant to do. So it's a bit of a weird one, but yeah, I was surprised to find after a lot of chasing around the circuit it went to this switch, because the standard version of these sets, or the non-remote one, just has an AFT switch, probably in place of this one. So I guess that's why they use the same switch. But yeah, it means when your automatic fine tuning is locked on, it's also in that weird mode where the colour goes dimmer and everything. I think there is a trim pot on the back of this, maybe something to do with setting what it does to the picture. I think it had something to do with the colour. It's like another pot in line with the main colour. I guess while we're in here it probably wouldn't hurt to clean all these pots while I got this part out. That's a weird angle, but we can get pretty good access to them all. Give them all a good wiping. I think these other ones are alright, but certainly won't hurt. Refresh them a bit, and that's our ultrasonic transducer there, the receiver side, sitting in a sort of rubber boot. But normally you don't have any issues with those. And I did get the remote somewhat working on this thing. Turned out there was a little wire between a couple of the battery terminals, just a bare wire, and that was corroded along with the battery terminals, and that was high resistance. And I think we've now got channel up down is working, but the power still doesn't. At least we've got some output from the remote now. And there's a little clip on the bottom of this, down under the switch pot. There's a clip you've got to release to get this out. And I'm probably going to have to fiddle around a bit to get it back in as well. I'm hoping it just pushes in, but yeah, I think it does. And you need a nice long, well magnetised screwdriver like this sort of thing, because you don't want to drop any of these screws while you're messing around. One above the slider pots and below the ultrasonic transducer there. And there's 2 others. One was above the switch pot, and the other one's hiding behind these wires. Now another way to tweak the focus is to use a screwdriver or something, so you're not putting your hand right in there. You can put your fingers on the pot, but there is a terminal block and stuff there which may just be earth or something, but I'm not going to find out the hard way. And just look at the front of the set from the side. It was pretty close. I think I've got it slightly better, which hopefully gets a bit of that blurriness out of the edges. Okay, so I just got the focus a bit better on the dot pattern. Still some convergence issues and probably a bit of focus out on the corner. Volume works nicely again. Even this thing seems to not do such an aggressive change of the brightness and stuff, so maybe that switch just needed the contacts cleaning. But yeah, it's certainly better than it was. Yeah, that sort of just dims it down a bit, but not as bad as it was doing. And the remote just sequentially goes through because we've only got one channel button, which is better than nothing. I guess back in the days when we only had two channels, you could always tune it so they had like 1 and 2 as the first two channels, and then 3 and 4 you just repeat them, so you're always flicking from one channel to another. Is another way of doing it, but the power on off, I don't... Oh, it did just work. Oh, that's right, I think it's a bit dicky. So it's probably the actual switching part. That's right, I did get it to turn on and off. And damn wind's come back again. So not much of a remote, but for a 1975 type chassis, that's pretty good. They were only just coming out of the earlier black and whites with wired remotes at that sort of era. But yeah, that's all running again. So I just really want to get this thing out of the way. For the time being, I think I'll put it up on the shelf above, up nice and high out of the way. I might put the legs back on it, because it would be nice to actually see this TV and actually see it with an old set with the legs on it again, something you don't sort of see around these days. I think they call this a low boy cabinet, and they basically sat on the floor on legs. And the main problem with these Sanyo ones, unlike most models, is they have this wooden bit on the bottom. When you take the legs off, you've got holes on the corner, so if you ever got these sets second hand without the legs, they were a real pain because they look terrible. You couldn't really sell them just like that. Possibly you can rip those bits off from memory, but I'm not sure that it really works. I think there's stuff sticking out the bottom of the cabinet. So ideally these models need legs with them. Sometimes you got them, sometimes you didn't. And to get the legs off like I did with this one, what I always used to do is just grab the TV, tip it, sit it on its one end, either end on the floor so it's standing upright, and then you just undo these. They're just diagonal with the thumb screws or butterfly nuts, whatever you want to call them, and take them off like that, and then you could pick the set up and go and put it in your car or whatever. I used to just leave the legs at the customer's home if I had to take one back to the workshop. But that's what I did with this one, just flipped it up on its end and took them off, and then it fitted nicely in the back of the wagon. But yeah, that's all sort of going. It's better than I actually was expecting from it. I think moving it around, I've just put a bit of a purity issue there. Yeah, that wasn't there before. So I guess we could degauss that so it doesn't look as bad. But may just that end by the look of it. Oh, we've got a little bit up there. So that's got that pretty right. There's the geometry a little bit out at this corner. Could be caps or something a little bit out. Might be an adjustment in there somewhere. But for the time being, at least I've given it a once over. You know, I can get the thing at least on sort of out of under all the junk and on display. So I'll put the legs back on this. I think I'll put it on the shelf above, then I can make some room to get some other stuff out of my way. And there is one black and white TV that came from the same place I might get onto, and at least that one probably, this one I just plugged in at their home, didn't worry about dim bulbs or anything like that, because normally you'd have to worry about it in these colour TVs, so they are getting pretty old, and I don't know how long since this one was last turned on. But I think the black and white one, I'll do a dim bulb on that just because they're much older, more likely to have faulty parts, and also more risk of burning out the transformers in valve gear, it seems. Whereas these things, there's only a switch mode power supply anyway, so at worst you'd probably get like a faulty filter cap or something putting ripple on the screen. Possible it could blow something, but generally I don't think it's too much of a worry at this stage. But I guess we should start thinking about using dim bulbs on these things. But yeah, they're all going fairly well. Let's see if I can turn it off. Yeah, can use the remote. So that would have been very handy in the day, especially for an older person or something that didn't want to get up and down. But most people just, you turn the TV on once in the evening and then turn it off when you went to bed sort of thing, so it was no big problem. You're on your feet anyway. Changing channels, yeah, we only used to have a couple of channels, so it didn't really matter much either. Often wouldn't be changing that often in a night necessarily. You'd be watching, most people either watch one channel or the other, the ABC or the commercial. but occasionally you change shows through different ones. And of course there was always the channel surfing if you wanted to channel surf during ad breaks. Pretty much watching anything is better than watching an advert, so they were handy for that. And there it is, up on the top shelf. But yeah, it's been a long time since I've had a TV with legs like that on it. So the other one I've got to get onto is the old black and white one here, and that's got legs on it as well. I'll have to get them off, get that on the shelf where the Sanyo was, and if I can get them out of my way, I'm actually making some progress. I can move a heap of other stuff out of the way. So that'll do that one for now. I might have another look at this remote and see, just give that button a clean, I reckon is all it needs. And that should get that one pretty well done for the moment, so thanks for watching.